morning. This is retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church, a little Lutheran church in Amherst, New York. We welcome you to our, not broadcast, but a internet recording of our service, and it's the 19th of January of 2025. It's kind of cold, a little bit snowy here, maybe a half inch of snow, something like that, but it's cold. And so you know it's January in Buffalo. We're up to the second Sunday after the Epiphany. So Epiphany is January 6th, and which no longer has a meaning of Epiphany in our country anymore. Now it's just something else. But now it's January 19th, so we're second Sunday after. And the traditional text that's appointed is the wedding of Cana. This is from the Gospel of John, 2nd chapter, verses 1 through 11. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what do I have to do with you? My hour is not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he said to you, do it." And there were set 6 water pots of stone after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water," and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw out the water now and bear it to the governor of the feast." And they did it. And when the ruler of the feast had tasted the water, it was made wine, and did not know from when it was. But the servants which drew the water knew. The governor of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Every man at the beginning does set forth the good wine, and when people have gotten drunk, then that which is worse. But you've kept the good wine till now." This beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. Here ends that portion of the text. Now, I focus on just one little part. They have no wine. Why? Why focus on that? This little thing of Mary going to Jesus saying they have no wine. Well, because think about all that's going on. Up to this point, Jesus, he has gathered to himself a bunch of disciples. He's begun teaching a little bit, not much. Things are early days. Again, this is just John chapter 2. So early days. Not much has happened, and he hasn't done anything miraculous yet. They just see him as some 30-year-old, non-qualified rabbi who has no training in Jerusalem, although at 12 he astounded everyone in the temple. But that's 12. Sure, he was hailed as a wunderkind for a while, but how long does that go? In the meantime, he's back in Nazareth making chairs. That's all he's done for the last 15 or so years. So it's a big so what, really. It's a big nothing. And so he's got some students that follow him around, which none of them are actual students. So the whole thing looks pretty stupid, really. And Mary, she's living up north. See, there's Galilee. This is like Utah. No one lives there. Or a few people live there, but are there any big cities in Utah? Salt Lake City, maybe? Okay. Never been there, don't know. But I've been to other parts of Utah, and all I remember that was snakes, desert, and 110 degrees in the shade. Been there. Stuck there in a Volkswagen van with no air and only cracked windows. Garbage. Anyways, so that's Galilee. That's the northern part of Israel. And then there's Samaria in the middle. Still, it's a big nothing burger. And then you get down to Judea. Now you have Jerusalem, the cities, blah, blah, blah. And the thing about the Northlands, it's not like driving from here up to the lake, going north, and there's a lot of those places, or you're going to pick peaches or pears or something, you have to drive north. Yeah, I guess you could drive south, but is there anything there? I've never seen orchards. I guess when you get to the top of the escarpment, around PA, there's some wine vineyards there. But not like you're going to go pick apples there. So the thing about going north from here is it's flat. You get to the lakes. It's not hills. In Israel, by the time you get to the Dead Sea, you're at 1,200 feet down. This is a big drop. To the left of the Jordan Valley is garbage. I mean, Samaria has a lot of unhealthy deserts. When I say unhealthy, the groundwater is radioactive naturally. It's been radioactive forever. it's got isotopes there that nobody should eat or drink. So no one really lives there. They didn't know about that radiation, but they all knew don't live down there. Little dead corner wadis. That's a burned out river, dried up river in Hebrew. It's just nothing. That's Samaria. And then you get down to Judea. Like I say, you have Jerusalem. You're below sea level by quite a bit. But no one really wants to travel uphill, over 1,000 feet uphill, with dragging a cart or whatever to go to the northern part of Israel. No one lives there. It's like Utah. It's like when Moses said, "Come to the promised land." And they were like, no. This land is terrible. Are you kidding? I mean, there were parts of it that were nice, but most of it was garbage. Still is. 2,000 years later. Go look at it if you don't believe me. Like where they're fighting, all that. It's mostly just desert. You can't grow much there. Useless land. Then a few places they've used modern irrigation to fix up, but mostly garbage. Well, in fact, two of the biggest tribes didn't even go to the promised land. They went south. They're like, this is way better. Did you not see this? This is better land. We're going here. Judah, them, they were like, we're not going to the promised land. They never did want to go to the promised land. It was only God's promised land. It wasn't, they didn't want it. Even at the time, they told Moses, no, not a good place. So, Jesus lives and grew up in Nazareth, which is in the hinterlands. He's up north. It's a nobody place. No one, like the disciples themselves said, can anything good come from Nazareth? Like, seriously? Are you being serious? You're telling me that the Messiah is here, walking with us. And remember, he hasn't done anything miraculous yet. Nothing. And you're telling me that the Messiah is some 30-year-old guy who makes chairs. What's his qualifications? The rabbis in Jerusalem approve him? Because that was necessary. Even today, it's illegal to preach without an actual license to preach. If you take offerings, you're committing a crime under federal law and state law. Impersonating pastors, actually, you get a sentence of 5 years in New York State. So anyways, and then too, you needed a license. It was required. It's a thing, He didn't have any of that. He's just making chairs. And one day he decides to leave that, and his cousin in Jerusalem, John, is like, hey, you should go see this guy, my cousin. Sounds a little suspicious, right? Nothing miraculous yet. That's the setting for today's text. And that's why it begins with this little footnote here on John 2. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee. As if there's another place that wants to be called Cana. And there are. You cross over Jordan Valley on the right-hand side, there are places in the Decapolis with the pagan land. And that's, there's other Canaans. But this is the one up north in Israel. Okay. And she comes and says, they have no wine. Now, if you think today that part of the world is messed up, yeah, you'd be right. But 2,000 years ago, it was just as messed up. Israel didn't even have their own country. They weren't a thing. They were a vassal of the Romans. And before that, they'd been a vassal of Tiglath-Pileser III, or II, or whatever, Babylonians, Assyrians, anybody that wanted that garbage dump. There was nothing there. I mean, like today, Russia wants Ukraine. Why? Because Ukraine is the breadbasket of half the world. Egypt has nowhere to grow food. They get about 80% of their food from Ukraine. Because Ukraine is just great farmland everywhere. Israel, why did the Romans even want it? Well, it's got roads. If you're going north and south, It's a narrow place. It's worse on the other side. So as much of this is garbage land, at least the Romans made roads so you can get north and south. That's all they wanted it for. It was just a transit. It was like where they put the expressway. So it has no use. It has no desirability. And so where is it designed that he is going to first reveal himself? Because that's all this is. That's why Epiphany, the first miracle. Epiphany is just Greek word to show, to reveal something that's hidden. That's all. So, you have, he had an epiphany, and he figured a better way to make a light bulb. Okay, yeah. Well, that's why this text is selected. But of all the things going on in the world, you got the Romans, you got the Jews who've been, they had raiding parties. They were like a thorn in the Roman side. Like I said, they made roads through there because that's all it was good for, was going north and south. But the Jews were a pain in their backside. Why? Well, because every time they went north and south, the Jews would come, well, they didn't have horses, but they'd come running out of the hills. And there weren't a lot of them, like 40. Josephus, who became a historian for the Romans, was leading a little pack of these, and there are like 40 of these idiots. They lived in a cave. It's a famous story. So anyways, they had these little packs of poorly equipped. They were living in the Bronze Age. The Romans had iron. They actually had some steel things. I mean, and a centurion, he led more disciplined troops than they were about level of USMC. Semper Fi. If that's the standard, that was Roman standard. I mean, if they were told to step through the breach, they stepped. Why? Because the centurion himself was the center of the V shape. The guy leading the charge was your boss. He wasn't back on a mountain going, left, guys, go a little left and then cut through. No, he was like, I'm right here. I'm making the hole through the enemy. He's covered in blood. But the average height of these guys was 6.5 feet. With a silver helmet on their head that was glistening and steel plates that were like impenetrable. Sure, they made a hole through the enemy. They made lots of holes in the enemy. Because they had bronze swords or wooden spears. What do you think you're going to do against a Roman? They kicked their butts. So, with all that going on, and the Jews were just like some little vassal tribe of idiot little tribes that didn't even like each other, wouldn't talk to each other mostly. Some were forbidden to even marry other Jewish tribes. If you were from Benjamin, good luck getting a wife. You weren't popular. Little tribes. Anyways, so what does God pick for the first miracle? To reveal, to make known that which was hidden. His Son, the Son of God, the Savior of the world. John's cousin, who makes chairs. It sounds stupid to even say this out loud. They have no wine. From the look of it, he doesn't even pick what he's going to do. In fact, he kind of embarrasses his mother by saying, like we would say, really? And? Duh. That's basically his answer. That's the real translation of it. And she's done this quietly because she doesn't want to embarrass her friends. They're obviously cousins. They wouldn't be there otherwise. Because the poor did not invite a bunch of extra people. This is a week-long wedding. A poor man's wedding takes a year to save for. They ran out in 3 days. They are freaking out because people are going to be there 3 more days and they're out of wine. It's like a frat party and you go and there's no beer. Instead, they're serving warm ginger ale or warm apple juice with cinnamon. Here, we have cider. You have cider? Yeah, we got a reading section over there. we're out of here. Worst frat party ever. That's the level of this. It's a poor man's wedding that ran out of wine in just 3 days. They got 3 more days to go. What are they going to do? So Mary, who's obviously a close cousin of the family, because even the governor of the feast, the guy who's appointed, not that he's somebody special, he's not like a 2-star chef. This is just some guy from one of these little towns nearby who's a cousin who's just in charge of making sure that people don't die from rancid beef. That's about the level. I mean, we can cook that. They're running out of everything. This, of all of the other problems in their world, Romans. And then too, the Jews were divided. They had some of the tribes said, who's going to marry from Benjamin? Nobody. And it's worse then too, because some of the Jews before had gone off worshiping other gods, and they were completely shunned. The Samaritans, nobody wanted anything to do with them except Jesus. He wouldn't talk to them, but no one else. And yet they consider themselves Jews. So there's so many really big issues. And so it seems that he doesn't pick his own miracle, his first thing. Doesn't seem like there's a voice from heaven, his father. It's just that there's an embarrassing little wedding where the guy who makes chairs and's got some flunkies that are hanging with him. Who are they? Oh, most of them are fishermen. If you know professional fishermen, it's my first call. It's in the Florida Keys. I know some professional fishermen. They do carry knives and guns. Yeah, the thing about them, their boats are pretty well equipped. Drunk, there's some heavy drinking going on there. Yeah, although not late at night because they're up at 3 a.m. But yeah, it's a rowdy crowd. Be very rowdy. And that's who he's hanging with? There's not an academic in the whole mix. None. Not one. And so, this is just weird. And so, the scripture records this as the first, he turned water into wine. Oh, come on! It was a mess. It was a disaster to begin with. It's a tiny wedding for a poor guy who ran out of booze on the 3rd day. This is like you go to a wedding, and in half an hour, the bar runs dry. And everyone's at the bar going, is there nothing? It's not even beer? No. The bridegroom only paid for 1 bottle of wine, one 6-pack of beer, and that's it. And they're all going, but what can we drink? There's coffee and there's water. We're leaving. That's the wedding? These are the people? That's it? That's what we're celebrating. Ooh, Epiphany. That's one of the 4 high festivals of the church here. January 6th. And you look at it, and on his view, and it's a nothing hamburger. It's just nothing there. Except that Jesus turns a whole bunch of water into really high quality wine. And I probably don't need to go into chemistry to tell you there's a lot of things in wine that aren't in a cup of water. Otherwise, kids at school would be really bombed. If you give a choice of water for lunch or wine, I'm sure they're going to go wine. I went to school in Europe, and they do serve beer and wine. You know, that's grade school. That's the thing. It's always been a thing. Apparently, it's healthier than pop. Anyways, and it's really low alcohol. But anyways, yeah, that's the miracle. I guess when you step back from it and look, the fact that he doesn't go to Jerusalem, he's not standing before a king or the high priest. It's not like he called down fire and lightning upon the Romans and freed Israel from foreign rule. It's not like he did anything that any any Jew, even living up north, would like. He just went to this little rinky-dink wedding and took care of a couple that really would have been embarrassed. And instead of being embarrassed, he made enough wine for another week easily. Now people tell you what firkins are. I have no idea. But honestly, we've seen their stone jars. Each one's about a keg. They're big. The white stone, they make them there. In northern Israel, they make them there. They're native. Secondly, there's a reason. Kosher is best kept with stone tableware. Never gets dirty. You can clean it with just hot water and soap. It's just easy. It doesn't usually crack. I mean, if you drop it, it's going to blow apart. So, it's not got a subtle crack. It's either whole or garbage. Perfect. So they made it big. Because if you're going to go with stone, it's heavy. You got a cart. You're not carrying it. So, yeah, big. Go big. So each one's a small keg. Or at least a keg. And that's a lot of wine. But the effect is that now this little couple that would have been awfully embarrassed because they were supposed to have saved for a year, and they probably did, but all they had was a few shekels and a few lepto. Lepto is a little cruddy silver coin, tiny. That's all they probably had. So rather than be embarrassed in front of all their guests, now all of a sudden it's like, you're just now bringing out the good stuff? We got four more days. We're going to party hardy, man. Guys, check this out. This is like, I don't know, what's a really good wine? I don't know. I like plum wine. Nobody else does. Everyone goes, ugh. But this is really good stuff, man. So they're like having a feast now. I guess what it really means when God reveals his son to the world is he's not interested in kings. He's not interested in making a political splash with anyone. He doesn't care about that in one whit. Psalm 2. The kings of the earth conspire together against the Lord to throw off their chains, saying, "Ha ha! What have you got on us now, big guy?" This is just free reading from Psalm 2. God sits in the heavens and laughs and mocks them. And then bad news for them. God doesn't give a rip about the rich, the famous, the important. He doesn't give a rip at all. But there's this little couple up in the Northlands who are having a really bad day. Because their bottle of wine and their six-pack is gone. And people are like, "You're bringing out more wine?" "Oh." And they're like, "We don't have any more wine." God doesn't think like us. He says, "My ways are not like your ways." Like, who would even want us? I don't know. Hey, Kara, how long have we been together? Since you were 17, I was 18? Yeah. So if you could trade me in for a better model. She's my wife. Oh. She's like, where do I sign? Where do I get the paperwork for this trade? Yeah. We could barely stand each other, much less ourselves. How'd you sleep? Your doctor says, "You don't sleep well." "Well, I'm thinking about this, and this, and this. Here's a pill." Go back to the doctor. "It's not working well." "Yeah, well, you've got sinus trouble and all the rest, so here's a machine that's going to make Darth Vader sounds all night long. Try that and your pill. Maybe you'll get some sleep." We can't even sleep. Our lives are so messed up. And our bodies. So God looks at things we don't care about. And he says, I care. Like, you consider your life and you think, God really care? I always say his great sense of humor. Because just when it's really going bad, really poorly, usually there's another few coming. It's like, oh, what's next? Because he has a sense of humor. He pushes you up to that edge. And you're about like David. The whole first 50 Psalms are David going, really? My life is garbage and then you throw this at me? I can't sleep. This is one of the Psalms. I can't sleep. I can't eat. And oh, by the way, my kids hate me. They kicked me out of Jerusalem. Not going well. My wives are arguing because I accidentally left a bunch of them there when I left town. Little hint. Don't leave your wives behind when your enemies are coming. They do resent that. Funny that way, you know. And the enemies were his own kids. Yeah. That's his life. For the first 50 Psalms are like that. The second 50 Psalms are like, really, God? Are you kidding? There's 150 Psalms, basically. 50. Ugh. The second 50. Why? Why are you doing this? You just like poking me? Is that fun? See me squirm? You know, that's a tough sense of humor. And the last 50 are, well, I'm going to die anyway, so we'll be together. It'll be fine. How's it going? It's fine. Like some kid on the Titanic. How are things going? It's fine. Oh, look, there's all the lifeboats. And yeah, it's fine. Cold. Water's really cold. I'm going to go into shock in a minute anyway, so who cares? So God considers the lowly. God thinks about things that humans, we wouldn't give a rip about. The poor, the lonely, sad, the afraid. And then he shows up and goes, I'm here. And you're like, really? Why? You gave me all this. Now you show up? Yeah. I was just I was golfing. I don't know what he does, but he had to be doing something. Then he shows up. And so this is about the Father, not so much the Son. This is how Dad operates. And you can be sure Jesus was like, now? He told Mary, it's not even my time yet. She's like, I don't care. Do something. He recognized the voice of his Father. Oh, crud. And she knew it. She's like, do whatever he tells you. I don't know what it's going to be. Just do it. Okay. What expectation did she have? I don't know. What expectation do you have? Same thing, right? Well, what's the Father's expectation? It's all going to work out beautifully. He made that wedding work out. A doomed wedding. Totally doomed from the start. They knew they only had a 6-pack of beer and a bottle of wine. They were dreading. Can you imagine how badly they were dreading this? They knew they were going to have to tell the small group of relatives, yeah, our bottle of wine is empty. We have no beer. And no pizza either. And we're out of wings. The Buffalo style. So, this is Dad's way of doing things. He did that with his son. You'd think he'd ride in as a king, but instead he sends him to die on a cross. A Roman instrument of death. Crucifixion. Really? Even Jesus in the garden was like, what's plan B? Because this can't be the real plan. I know this is not what we're doing today. So what you hiding around the corner, Dad? Crickets. Second time. Dad? Now he's sweating. Dad? I know they're coming soon. Do something. Crickets. And then they came. And that was it. And then his dad turned his back on him. He doesn't turn his back on us, but he turned his back on his son. And asked his son to die like that. With all of the hatred that God has against all of the garbage in our world. Well, we're not facing that. That's the good news. That's what we call good news. Actually, that's the gospel. That's it. That's the good news. We're not facing that. Brother did, but we're not. That's good. And so your brother says, but for you, it's all good. How? Well, you have to deal with him. If I was going to be, I don't know. How's my life going to be tomorrow? I don't know. If it's more of like what was last week, no thank you. Last week was not the best. Maybe this week will be a little better, huh? Hope, fingers crossed. But I don't know what he's got in mind. Who knows? But I do know one thing. He thinks this way. So just when you think it's only the rich, the powerful, the wealthy, it's actually none of that at all. It's just you. In Jesus' name. Amen.